Welcome to Education Lounge.
Hello and welcome to today's Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here. We are embarking on a truly fascinating journey today, diving deep into the human mind to explore the holistic view of humanistic theory. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our visual trail map for today. We're going to cover the humanistic psychology shift, growing into your potential, Carl Rogers and true congruence, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and finally, reaching your self-actualization. First up, Section 1, the humanistic psychology shift, moving beyond limited views. To really appreciate this shift, we kind of have to look backward for a second. Think about those older, more mechanical views of human behavior. Were we really just driven by unconscious desires we couldn't even control, like psychoanalysis argued? That's a pretty limited view, right? Or were we just reacting to conditioning like machines, as behaviorism suggested? Well, humanistic theory completely flipped the script on all of that. So the crucial point is that this new holistic understanding argued we are actually driven by inherent potential and free will. It's about choosing to look at the whole person, not just a bunch of symptoms or conditioned reflexes. Moving right along to Section 2, growing into your potential, the seed of humanistic thought. To really wrap our heads around this perspective, early pioneers loved using this specific metaphor, a growing plant. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean. You start with that tiny seed, which represents that limited, mechanical view we were just talking about. But then you add holistic understanding, acting as the watering can, and it sprouts. It turns out we are inherently designed to grow. We have the free will to reach upward and literally, just like a healthy plant, blossom into our ultimate selves. This is that state known as self-actualization. Let's officially lock in our working definition here. Humanistic theory is a psychological perspective emphasizing holistic understanding, free will, and the core belief that people are naturally good and capable of self-improvement. Just notice the radical optimism in that statement. It assumes your baseline isn't broken or robotic. No, your baseline is actually good, and your natural, inherent trajectory is upward growth. Section 3. Carl Rogers and true congruence, aligning your internal climate. So, if we're all designed to grow, why do some of us feel so stuck? Well, Carl Rogers explained this by looking at the internal mechanics of our personality. Now, what's really interesting about the slide is how it breaks down that internal climate. We all have a self-image, that's who we think we are right now, and an ideal self, who we strive to be. If you look at that incongruent state, when those two circles barely touch, meaning your self-image is vastly different from your ideal self, self-actualization is incredibly tough. But when they heavily overlap in a congruent state, that's when real growth is finally possible. Let's ground this with a real-world example. Just imagine a college student or maybe a young professional. If they're incongruent, they might see themselves as a chronic procrastinator who's always dropping the ball. But their ideal self, that's a highly organized top-tier achiever. That massive, painful gap between the two creates anxiety, it builds defensiveness, and it totally stunts their growth. On the flip side, a congruent person might idealize being a great communicator, and their self-image acknowledges that, sure, they have room to learn, but they actively listen and they speak clearly. Because that gap is small and those circles overlap, that person feels secure enough to keep growing. To help people close that painful gap, Rogers developed person-centered therapy, also known as client-centered therapy. Instead of the therapist playing the all-knowing authority who diagnoses a broken machine, the therapist acts more like a facilitator. The entire goal here is to gently guide those two circles on our Venn diagram closer together, helping the individual achieve that absolutely crucial congruence between their current self and their experiences. And the absolute primary tool used in this therapy is a concept called unconditional positive regard. This involves complete, unwavering acceptance and support of the person. Think back to our plant metaphor from earlier. If congruence is the blossoming flower, then unconditional positive regard is the nourishing water and sunlight. Rogers firmly believed that without this fundamental acceptance, a person's psychological seed simply cannot grow. Section 4. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, scaling the mountain of growth. While Carl Rogers was busy mapping out our internal Venn diagrams, Abraham Maslow shifted gears to map the external steps. And we're going to shift our metaphor here from a growing plant to a mountain climb. Interestingly enough, Maslow never actually drew this famous pyramid himself. Management consultants added it later on. But the metaphor holds brilliantly. He frames self-actualization as the absolute highest need at the peak of the human experience. And you can't just helicopter to the top. You have to climb those foundational levels first. Let's rapidly walk up these mountain steps together. At the very bottom, we have our physiological needs. These are your basic survival requirements, food and sleep. Look, if you are starving or exhausted, you definitely aren't thinking about personal growth. Once those are met, you climb to safety needs, physical and financial security. Next up is love and belonging, which is that deep human connection we all crave. Only when you feel secure and loved can you truly tackle the next tier, esteem. That's where we seek achievement, respect, and confidence. And finally, if all of those lower needs are solidly met, you can reach the summit, self-actualization. Let's move to our final section and see how this builds. Reaching your self-actualization, arriving at the summit. When we synthesize Rogers' overlapping circles and Maslow's mountain climb, we really get to the true magic of humanistic theory. As the source material beautifully states, the humanistic approach views people as naturally good and capable of self-improvement, emphasizing understanding individuals holistically. Essentially, both frameworks are aiming to do the exact same thing, unlock our inherent natural potential. The goal isn't to fix some fundamental flaw in human nature. The goal is simply to provide the right conditions, whether that's Rogers' unconditional positive regard or Maslow's basic safety and esteem, so our inherent capability for greatness can finally reveal itself. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a direct question to ponder about your own personal journey. Take a look at your own life, your own internal climate, and your own personal mountain. Are your self-image and your ideal self aligned for the climb? Because once you recognize your own inherent potential to grow, reaching that summit of self-actualization isn't just some abstract psychological theory anymore. It actually becomes your reality.